All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Getting Personal with Compt. I'm Lauren Schneider, the head of communications. And today we are talking about something that is incredibly relevant. And with me, I have Jeffrey Hull. He's the founder and CEO of SavvyFi. But what does that mean, Jeff? Tell me a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So founder and CEO means that I have, two kids at home and I have a kid that's a company and all of those things. So there's a lot of parenting going on. But what is SavvyFi? We are kind of your one-stop shop to handle student debt, all the way from preventing it on the front end to getting rid of it on the back end after it's already accumulated.
So, student loan debt is, it's a topic I've heard about for like decades, but it seems like it is really at the forefront right now, not just for the people who are trying to repay their student loans, but it's like commonplace in the workplace now. We're all talking about it because we're all impacted in some kind of way. Not just the people who are, writing the checks, but it's an important, almost an employee benefit that people are looking for. So tell me a little bit more about um, what motivated you to start Savvy Financial, and like how does this help individuals with student loan payment? Because there's a lot of intricacies here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, SavvyFi got its origin as a 529 college savings product. So it used to be college savings. Now it's kind of education savings. It covers a lot of ground. So 2 and 4 year schools, trade schools, apprenticeships, even K through 12, and pretty much anybody can sign up for a 529 account for anybody else. When we first got started, we saw that this product has a lot of potential, but I think there's like less than 40% of Americans can correctly identify it. Even when you can, there's 50 different state plans that you have to go out and look for, and it's one of those things that you could tell it was designed a lot with tax implications and compliance in mind, and not really user experience. So we saw that. We saw obviously a generational change where people that have student debt are much more aware of how big of a problem it is. So when they have children, they're starting to think about it earlier and earlier. Let's help prevent our child from going down the same road. And we also saw that it's a extremely social financial goal, meaning that friends, family, everybody wants to get involved and chip in. And so when we recognize all of those things, we said there's a user experience. This is a user experience problem that can be solved, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. And we also identified early on that there's a lot of organizations that are kind of behind solving this problem as well, from banks to employers to you name an organization and there's a way they can plug in retailers. But really employee benefits, we heard the calling early on. This is something 529s as an employee benefit, never gotten much success because of those user experience problems. So if you've solved those, you have a home here in employee benefits. We expanded from there into student loans because there was some legislation that occurred during the pandemic where companies can now give up to $5,250 tax-free to student loans. And so that really acted as a catalyst for companies contributing, helping employees pay off their student debt. So we broadened our platform and really became that one-stop shop. You walk through the door, and if you're like my family, my wife and I have 5 degrees, we have a ton of student debt. We also have 2 wonderful children. We're also thinking about retirement. But as far as on the education side, the education financing side, we're managing all of our, preventing it for our children, but also getting rid of it for ourselves all in one place. And that's how there's no neat buckets anymore. There's no, I'm just a college saver. There's no, I'm a student loan repayer. It's, even if you look at people that have parents that have kids that are entering college, a lot of them have already paid off their student debt, but a lot of them are taking it back out through Parent Plus loans because their kids, use up all the financial aid, the student loans that they have available, and they still haven't covered the cost of college. So it's grown to be such a big problem. It impacts all generations. And so we want to be that platform, that door. You come to SavvyFi to solve your problem, whatever it is. And in the workplace, hopefully your employer is contributing quite a bit to it as well, to really move the needle for you in a meaningful way.
A few things that you've said started getting the gears turning for me, especially because we have a workforce now that encompasses 5 different generations. And the things that people are looking for are really different across the board. And I'm wondering if you've seen a shift from, in terms of employee benefits, instead of people seeking out 401ks, looking for student loan repayment assistance, or even more broadly, like financial wellness as a crucial benefit. So, what are your thoughts?
I think when it comes to financial wellness, we'll start there. I think that we are really, our team really believes in outcomes. The thing that you're doing in financial wellness must have an outcome. The outcome is not to be more knowledgeable. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there at Investopedia for people to educate themselves if they want that. But we really believe in the outcome. So definitely seeing that become more, it's becoming a talking point where a lot of benefit consultants will go to their clients and they'll say, let's talk about health insurance, let's talk about mental wellness, and let's talk about financial wellness. And then within each of those categories, particularly financial wellness, that becomes a really broad thing. Retirement is now in financial wellness. There's obviously student loans, 529s, the general education, tapping into your paycheck earlier, all kinds of things like that you can, it's a really broad bucket that you want to take, if you're an employer, take a look at your organization and what those needs are. And there's a lot of solutions that you can bring in place there. But as far as it becoming, retirement and student loan, there's this trade-off for a lot of people entering the workforce after recently graduating, where they have all of this debt. They can enroll in their 401k, they can get the match, right? But there's just kind of a mental thing of like, how can I justify building up assets when I need to pay down debt?
Right.
There's that piece of it. And then there's also, there's this general conventional wisdom that you have to max out your match for your retirement. But maybe, like, if you can't meet day-to-day expenses, maybe not, right? And so, I think we kind of look at people that aren't doing their retirement, and we as an industry and say like they should be matched and getting that match. They should be doing retirement, but a lot of times maybe they shouldn't, right? And so when it comes to financial wellness, meeting people where they are, if what I'm focused on right now is my kids' college or my own student debt, meet them there and figure out a way to bring them along to the rest of the journey. And definitely the journey hopefully winds with people that can choose when to stop working. It all kind of funnels towards retirement, but you got to kind of meet people where they are and bring them along. And we definitely see that as far as in the workplace with mental wellness and financial wellness being connected and retirement being connected and everything. It's a long life cycle problem. And so having a lot of different solutions that you can bring in place, I think is definitely the way to go.
Couldn't agree more. There's so much research that we've seen, and even just like anecdotal evidence of how interconnected these things are in the workplace. Like, you can't bring your whole self to work and be your most productive if you're worried about all of the other things at home or trying to make ends meet. And we know, I guess what we talk about a lot at Compt is the importance of total compensation and looking beyond your salary and beyond the traditional benefits, and what other ways can you support people. So I'm thinking that what you do at SavvyFi is really interesting, because we're starting to see more conversations around how financial wellness is just as important as mental health and mental wellness, and how those things are interconnected. So I want to ask you, based on the conversations that you're having, when you're presenting your solution, when you're just chatting with others in your industry, what kind of impact are you finding that this benefit has for your clients on, recruiting, retention? What does that all look like?
Yeah, that's as benefit vendors, it's our favorite thing to go in there and say, we're going to solve your recruiting problem with it. You need our benefit, right? I think the truth is it's all about, there's a portfolio that you take to solve recruiting and retention. And I'm not gonna say that we're the silver bullet, or that such a silver bullet even exists. Right. But I do have a few anecdotes. Like, when you're thinking about, there's a couple stories that I've seen in the workplace. One where, you think about somebody that's just had a child, right? And that's a super emotional time. We're just talking about that earlier, like both our kids are sick. It just, it just totally throws everything up in the air. But when you have a child, it's extremely emotional time for the family, particularly for the mother. You think about like, how do I now coexist my work life with this home life? I have this really important thing that I need to do now. And that's a time where employers can win or lose loyalty. You probably are winning or losing. There's probably no neutral ground at that point. And so when you think about some things like, an employer contribution to the 529 is going to be super differentiated. It's going to be super noticeable, right? It's going to be super appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that. We've seen extremely high participation numbers, people saving for their kids or grandkids themselves. It's definitely, you'll get the anecdotal buzz from it. But if you think about this parent, one of them who, just had a child and they're having to come back to work too early, they're having trouble adjusting with that child, and the work's not really all forgiving with the schedule. And they're like, well, I've seen everything I need to see. I need to get out of here, right? That's one story. Right. Another story is we've seen companies that will do a, kind of welcome to the world gift for the newborn. And we can even pass around gifting links to the workplace. A lot of times you'll see, and when we all used to be in the same room together, you see people that would put a card together and everybody would sign and give money, right? This is the digital equivalent of that. But, when you hear the story of, gosh, I can't believe my workplace actually contributed to they were the first gift into my child's college fund. There's some real emotional points that you win with that as an employer. So I think that, there's that being able to bring in a solution that addresses so many generations in so many different ways with such an emotional kind of goal across the board. I think there's just a lot of opportunities for companies to really win some points and really contribute to culture in a new way that's unexpected. But again, you can't bring in a student, as much as we all say, you can't bring in your student loan benefit and solve all your problems, right? It's really the use this benefit as a way to really connect with something that's really meaningful to your employees. Helps you win points and helps you start to move that needle in the right direction.
I like the way you frame that, because I think oftentimes that is what we are trying to express when we're talking about the importance of lifestyle spending accounts, not just the gym membership or not just the free lunch at work. Doing things that move the needle have to go beyond just putting a bonus on the paycheck. A lot of times these companies are like, well, for the cost of SavvyFi or for the cost of Compt, why don't I just add some money on a paycheck? But a lot of times it goes unnoticed. Yeah. You're not creating those moments that you were just talking about where you can sign a card and go beyond just that tower of diapers that everyone makes and gives you.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And really help build a future for your employee and their family. So that's something that I know if I got something like that when I had my daughter, I would think about that forever. I mean, I did get all sorts of gifts, but you can only get so many onesies. They grow out of them really fast.
They sure do.
You're not going to grow out of a saving fund.
Yeah, definitely. And especially, we have this really cool feature, and this is one of the kind of central design themes that we started out with, is there's just a wall of everybody. When I used to get birthday cards, my mom would stick them in a drawer, and why are you doing that? They'd stick in there, they stay in there. I have, years of birthday cards in there. Kind of that same concept, but digitally. We have a timeline of everybody that's given a gift and left a message. And so you can always look back and say, here are all the people that supported my child, supported us, said that we were worthy of this investment, which again is this really cool emotional thing that sticks around long after the week and a half that tower of diapers sticks around in the early days,
If you make it a week and a half.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But I really, the lifestyle spending account concept just makes a ton of sense to me. And I think that 529s and student loans have a great home there as well. So when you think about it, it just doesn't really, it's never made sense, and it still doesn't, for, maybe a benefit team and their broker to sit around and say, what do our people want? And almost even when you survey them, that's okay. It's good intel, but it's people vote with their dollars. And if you give them the opportunity to say what's most important to you and just choose it. And having the ability to include student loans and 529s, you know, particularly we have one employer that's contributing $400 a month to their employees' student loans. Yeah, like you
Wow.
said, you give them a $400 a month raise, and it probably, yeah, it's nice for a little while, mostly goes unnoticed. But you tell them like, hey, you don't have to make student loan payments anymore. That's a big deal. That's a totally separate part of your. You're not thinking about this is a little nice little bump on my salary, but it's like I don't have to make student loan payments anymore because I work at this employer. And then if you give people the option to whatever they have allocated in their lifestyle spendings account to do that same thing, we see people put. They allocate a really large chunk of that stipend to these goals because they are so important. So I just think it's great that, you know, the LSA concept to give the employees to let them direct the money where it's most meaningful to them.
Could not agree more. I want to ask you, what key factors should companies consider if they want to implement this benefit? Because there's a lot that goes into especially with the tax implications of 529s versus student loan repayment. And we know all of that is changing regularly with like the 2020 CARES Act and the extension and et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. What should they think about? So one, I think, you know, the tax piece of it is one piece. Student loans, you can contribute up to $5,250 tax-free to your employee student debt. So that's good. 529s aren't there yet. Although I can tell you that employees don't care if you give to their 529. We have aunts and uncles that are increasing their taxable wages to contribute to put their employer contribution towards a niece or nephew, right? They love it, but it's not tax advantage yet from the employer's perspective. But there's legislation that's been drafted, and it'll get its day, and it'll get enacted, and it'll be treated a lot like an HSA at that point. So we expect that to come down the pipe pretty soon. But that's definitely one of them. The other one is, I would say, you know, a lot of times the knee-jerk reaction is to put in a really exotic contribution scheme. So like if this person has been here between 68 weeks and 72, they'll get a contribution over that period and then it'll stop. And we also want them to wait 2 years before they get their first one. I think that the way to do this, because it's so differentiated today, it's kind of pass fail and just make an easy monthly contribution. Hopefully it's tax advantage. If it's not, nobody really cares all that much right now. And just it's so differentiated. Give it to them right when they start. Give it to them on a monthly basis. And you're going to get the retention benefit, the retention reward by doing it that way. So, and then also I think that like a big theme this year is we don't have budget for XYZ because of healthcare, right? And so it's something that we've really focused on. And another thing, doing a commercial for you, but I really don't like it. This year, if you have an LSA in place, and you know student loan payments just came back on. If you have an LSA in place, you have a student loan benefit in place. If you turn the category on, you don't have to go ask anybody for budget. And I think that's something to really think about if you are one of those companies that has or is thinking about an LSA, is thinking about the budget. It can be an easy button and one that. Again, you just give the employees the options of, is student debt a big problem for you now the payments are turned back on? Everybody's going to say yes. And there you go. Start chipping away at it.
Right. So as we look to the end of the year, and we know that an election year is coming up, what trends do you foresee in the future of financial wellness as an employee benefit, or even just like if you want to look more granularly, it's the student loan repayment. Maybe is that an easier or harder question? I
think that what we've seen over the past few years with like student loan forgiveness and the public student loan forgiveness program for nonprofits, all of these, the new forgiveness, the SAVE, income driven repayment, the SAVE plan, what you can always expect is the Secure 2.0, which is given everybody fits. What you can always expect is a cluster, and for the situation to evolve. But I really think that like you can mostly ignore all of that today, and just do what you can to keep it simple, right? If you get tax advantages or don't. Again, it's such a differentiated thing, financial wellness and particularly in the education financing such a differentiated thing. Like just ignore the noise and put a program in place, and you're going to get really great results with it. So that's kind of that's one man's take, but that's generally mine. Is like the more this legislation rolls out, a lot of it's well-meaning, but
Right.
it's implementing it's a nightmare. There's not a lot of guidance on it. So I would say you're going to win. It's like we say with 529 plans. Nobody ever gets to the end of the road where their child is 18 and they go, gosh, I got in the wrong 529 plan, and now that's why I'm screwed. Nobody ever says that. It's like you're in
Right.
one, right? And same thing, I think, with these, in the benefit world in this category. And then with financial wellness, there's, again, I think that it'll continue to, it's part of the conversation. Now, it's not, do you want to do anything with financial wellness? It's what are you doing in financial wellness? And constant legislation like the Secure 2.0 that allows you to it allows an employee to pay down their student debt and get that amount matched into their retirement account. So continue to see things like that. But yeah, I think it's really just, it comes down to the simple fundamentals of what do your employees want? What do they value? You're going to get the most ROI on your dollar if you're putting it there. And then just make sure that you're kind of heavily focused on the outcomes, right? Like you no longer have to make your student loan payment because we've given you such a high contribution, right? That outcome, or your child, if we do continue to do the stipend, it's very likely before you put a single dollar out of your own wallet into your kid's 529 plan that they're going to graduate with no debt. Focus on that outcome, design your program so that there is a concrete outcome on the other side of it. And ignore the legislation as much as you can.
I feel like that's really good advice for HR people who are dealing with like our platforms and focus on the outcome, block everything else out.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Easier said than done, but that's I always like that. We have a saying around SavvyFi, which is keep it Sesame Street. So
I
keep
like
things
that.
Sesame Street.
That's really funny. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time today. Before we go, if people are trying to offer just better employee benefits, student loan reimbursement, financial wellness or aid to their employees, how can they find you? What kind of customer is your kind of customer? I think maybe we start there, and then how can they find you?
It's so you see in my name tag down there is SavvyFi, SavvyFi.co. That's the website. You can find us there. You can find me on LinkedIn, any way that you can reach out. Happy to kind of talk to you about, what piece of this full life cycle that you want to put in place. If you have budget for it, how to tap into budgets that already exist to put to this. But as far as the clients, we obviously see a lot in healthcare. And a lot of those, like mothers running away from their employer after they have their first child, a lot of those stories have come from healthcare. So there's definitely some really unique things you can do with student debt and with 529s in there. But yeah, it's really, if you have an LSA, there's no reason why you shouldn't be offering a student loan or 529 product inside of that. So anybody with an LSA is definitely a great person that we want to talk to. And then, other than that, all the typical industries that are typically more forward thinking, but we just see it all over the place. There's no trend. It's just companies that are thinking about how can we do something a little different. And in the education financing category, it's still in the early days. You can still do something really different without having to do 500. So without having to max out the 5250 contribution, you can do $100 a month or something like that. It'll still be really different. It's still pass fail. So anybody that wants to get a little bit of an edge on the recruiting competition, or that wants to do something that's super noticeable for their employees, this is a hard category to beat.
Yeah. We're all just out here trying to make for a better human experience at work.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Jeffrey,
it's kind of being demanded now,
Yes. I know. You were so right.
Yeah.
Demand, but in a good kind of way.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
For those who are watching, if you would like to be a guest on Getting Personal with Compt, send me an email. My email is lauren@compt.io. Catch you next time.